Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our fiscal year 19 overview and roundtable with State Fire Marshal Kevin Selmeyer. I'll be doing the webinar. My name is Sean Abbey. I'll be kind of facilitating this event this evening. I'm a battalion chief with the Kentwood Fire Department and a VP with the State Firefighters Union, as well as I chair the Michigan Joint Fire Service Council. And it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I'm glad to see that we got a good turnout here. Looks like we got over 60 people already, so it looks like
fantastic.
We'll have a good group with us. Real quick before we get into the webinar, I'm going to shut my screen here for a second, so my webcam, so you don't have to look at me all night in these goofy headphones. But I do want to kind of show you some features of your Fire Marshal. Can you do the same things?
Yep, absolutely.
For a second. And we want this to be as interactive as possible. So, and this will be recorded as well. So for people that can't make it, they can check it out later. If you have questions, there's a couple ways to do that. You can type them in. There's a chat area. You can send me a chat or the Fire Marshal. Try to go through me as much as possible, and I'll forward those to him or read them to him, just because it's hard to do both the PowerPoint and communicate. You can also raise your hand, which you can see kind of my cursor over right here. You can raise your hand, type stuff in. You can also take a screenshot. So if there's a slide, for example, that you want a shot of, you just go up there to the screenshot button there, and you hit screenshot, and you'll be able to get a picture of that for later use. It'll just save it right to your desktop, which is kind of cool. There'll be some surveys as we go through, or some polls that we'll have you answer. And then at the end of it, there'll be an evaluation. If you can please give us some information and feedback, that'd be great. So I'm going to get right through this, and I'm going to start kind of turn this over to the Fire Marshal. And I'm going to stop showing my screen, and I'm going to turn you over to him.
All right, I got to go to full screen here, right, Sean? And then I got to go to my PowerPoint.
Yeah,
all right, everybody should be seeing my PowerPoint.
Nope, it's going right. There you go. You're up and running.
So I got to hit show my screen, or is that you?
I've got you there. It looks like you are showing your screen.
I got a thing in the middle of my screen that says show my screen. So, okay, very good. All right, everybody.
We have someone with their hand up right away. Let me check this out.
Yeah, let's
Kathleen,
see. Let's make sure that they can see the screen.
Okay. Kathleen. Yeah. Kathleen, you there? You had your hand up?
Not able to see your PowerPoint. I'm just seeing the overview and roundtable page.
Yep, that is the PowerPoint.
That's the PowerPoint.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're all right. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Wanted to take an opportunity to talk about FY19. So the state works on a fiscal year. Yesterday was the start of our fiscal year, so we are into the new funding year, which means that if you haven't heard, we actually increased the funding. The council increased the funding, and then my bosses at Lara agreed with that, and we're going from 2 million to 2.3 million this year. So the first thing we're going to do, because the budget was actually approved back last spring, is the 2 million will be dispersed throughout the state. That was dispersed yesterday. And then what we're going to do is that we have to go for what they call a budget amendment or a budget supplement. That's a term that the state uses, and we'll get the additional 300,000. So every county that had finished their county survey actually had their funds deposited yesterday into their account. And every county across the state, so take all 83 counties, and they were given $17,500. So that's an increase from $15,000 to $17,500. And then further, so they dispersed that money.
Real quick.
And then
Kevin, your PowerPoint's not up. It's the main screen, so I don't know if you've pulled yours up or not.
Okay, hang on for a second. How about now?
There you go. Perfect.
Okay, So
Thank you.
one of the things that we wanted to do was we distributed the 17.5 to each county, and then there was money left. So the money that was left is using what they call the 70-30 rule. It's in or 70-30 formula. It's in Public Act 291, and then it talks about population and square miles. So give you an example, Wayne County has the most population. They're going to get the largest chunk of money in Wayne County. And then working out from there, the counties that don't have a lot of population, like I said, we're going to get 17.5. So one of the things that we wanted to share with you is we want to talk a little bit about the County Training Committee chairperson's role, and that's a term that's right out of Public Act 291. Every county has a person who's been identified for that county that is actually who we communicate with. And I say we, the Bureau of Fire Services, communicates with the county training chairperson. Some of the things that are the responsibility of the county training committee chairperson is to coordinate training within that county. So one of the things that I get asked this question a lot of times is, well, who is the county training chairperson? If you have any questions, you can reach out to your regional coordinators. That's either Dan Hammerberg from basically M46 North, and then TJ Richardson from M46 South. The state's divided into 2 regions. Reach out to them. If you're not sure who it is, they can point you in the right direction. The idea of giving the money to one person in the county is that way the state makes 83 distributions throughout to the different counties, and then we allow the counties to schedule the classes they want in smoke. That's a second bullet item, and they have to be in by December 31st. What we call that process is encumbering the money. So the money is encumbered, as in you put in for, let's say, a firefighter 1 and 2 class, and you put in the firefighter 1 and 2 class, you actually assign money to it, and then that money is encumbered. One of the things that I do want to caution some folks on, and when I say caution, some of the classes are going to finish in FY19, but they started even back in September. You can do that. The only problem is the money wasn't available until yesterday. So if you went in and you've already have your firefighter 1 and 2 class in there, or any other class, and it already started maybe in September, but it's going to finish in FY19, then what you need to do is you need to move the funding over. If you have any problems with that, there again, reach out to your region coordinator. The other thing that a county training chairperson is responsible for is to initiate the payments to the instructors. So to give you an idea that when a course is closed out, I'm going to go back up a slide. When the course is closed out,
I get a couple hands up too when you get a second.
Yeah, hang on. Let me finish this part
gotcha.
on. Yep. So when a course gets closed out, the 250 and smoke is finished. The course manager sends in the sign-in sheets. The course manager sends in all the paperwork that goes with the class. That's what closes it out. And Dan and TJ close out the classes. That also is what initiates payment. I can share with you this, that consistently the Bureau of Fire Services, once a class is closed, pays within 15 days. So when that money is dispersed out to the counties, I hear this a lot of times from instructors, we haven't been paid. I'll go back and I'll do a little checking. Within 15 days of the course being closed out, that money goes to the counties. When the money goes to the counties each have their own system of how they disperse the money. I do want to make this very clear though, it is the expectation from the state of Michigan and from the Bureau of Fire Services is that that money does not sit there. We believe that that money should be distributed to the instructors right away. So what I'm getting at, waiting 2-3 months to pay instructors, I hear this all the time, well, the state has our money. Like I said, within 15 days of a course being closed out, everything's churned in, everything's good, that money will arrive in your account. So those are some pretty important things that the county training committee chairperson does. Sean, you got a few questions you want to go to?
Oh yeah, Glenn's got his hand up here.
Okay.
Glenn, are you there? Oh, I turned his mic off. It doesn't appear he's got a mic. All right. Glenn, just go. You're gonna have to type in something to me because your mic's not working.
Okay.
So
Hey,
then we
Sean,
got
and one of
another
the
one.
things that
Oh,
as we found as we've done a few of these, right, is you know, to click along for, I think if we do a question on every single slide, so
okay.
you know, this will go a whole lot longer. So
Yep.
not that at the end I'll stay on as long as you all want to talk, but you know, to kind of move through the information. So you got one more? Did you get a question typed in you want to try to do?
No, we just had a question about the screenshot thing. The screenshot should be right at the top of the PowerPoint if you wanted to screenshot anything.
All right, I'm going to move to the next slide. So in Public Act 291, which was put into effect on January 31st of 2018, so it was this year, it actually is in effect, and some of the stuff that is in the Public Act, it's very clear. The Public Act says this is what it says. Some of it is not so clear, and when I say some of it's not so clear is we're going to have to do the rules. The rules process gives the, if you want to say, adds the finite parts to the puzzle, so to speak. It shares with you the processes that will be put in place. These processes are put in place by the Bureau of Fire Services and the Fire Marshal, with the majority approval of the Training Council. So as we move forward, you hear the Training Council's working on the rules. As we work through it, as we agree to certain parts of it, as we get ready to put the formal rules process in, which is a legislative process that ultimately has to go back into the state and the rules get approved, is that we'll be working on those processes. So one of the things on section 29.374, it talks about training expenditures, and it talks about in 3, it says a chairperson of a firefighter training committee shall establish in each county shall survey the training needs of an organized fire department and public safety department in the county. And then it talks about how the money is expended. One of the things that we had is we all the way back in May, there was an email correspondence that was sent out to the training coordinators to let them know that they needed to do this training needs assessment. And in fact, there was a procedure that went out, 9-13, that went out and shared with them, hey, you know, here's the things you should do in your survey. We also provided a couple of Excel spreadsheets for them to survey what in their county they wanted to do. And it had a due date of September 1st. The reason that we did that is we knew that the fiscal year would start on October 1st, and we wanted each of the counties to survey their fire departments. And that's not just survey one fire department. We're looking for the county training coordinator to survey all the fire departments. And we asked for it to be returned. Further, in August, TJ Richardson and Dan Hammerberg also sent out emails. I reminded them when we were at meetings to, hey, you know, it's the middle of August, send everybody an email and let them know that we need to make sure we get this back by September 1st. And then further, we sent out another email right at the end of August reminding folks. In the process, you know, we're getting busy with the fiscal year. We've started to work on the rules with council. And one of the things that came up was last week, I asked those guys how many surveys didn't we have back, and at that point we were at about 31 surveys that we didn't have back. I can share that on yesterday, on the 1st, we went through, we checked the smoke inbox, and we had 26 counties that had not submitted their training surveys or training needs surveys, and their money was not deposited into the account. So if you're hearing stuff around there that the state withheld the money, it's true. And it speaks to, like I said, there was a memo that went out on the 27th that talked about how the money's going to divide it up. It talks about the fiscal year update, and that's what we're going to talk about here tonight. When we talk about where did this come from, there is a part in that same section of the act that says that the fire marshal may withhold funds if part of the act is not followed. And we gave ample time. You had all summer to do the surveys. We had plenty of time for people to do that. And your money is here, but we need to trade you a needs survey for your county to then move that money into your account. So I'm going to make this very clear. All $2.3 million will be dispersed eventually throughout the state. But at this point, we have some counties, 26 of them as of yesterday, and I know quite a few got it done today and found it and turned it in, and that's great. And TJ and Dan will be working to put the money into those accounts. So everybody's going to get their money, but there are some requirements that have to be complied as we move through to make sure that because part of the thing that we get when we get audited is they ask us did we follow the act, and they're going to ask us to see the results for the surveys. So we're compiling this stuff at the Bureau of Fire Services to make sure that we're upholding our end of the act.
Yeah, one quick question here.
Yep.
How will the remainder of the 300,000 be split once that budget amendment's approved?
That will be split using the 70-30. So for the counties that were only going to get 17.5, they already got their 17.5. What it does is it goes out to the counties that fall within that already got extra money above the 17.5 and the 70-30 and the whole 2 million. So the whole 2 million was dispersed, and then they will actually that 300,000 will be divided that up. So if you're a smaller county or your county doesn't have the population and the square miles, you've already got your whole, if you got 17.5, you got your max. If you got more than 17.5, you'll be also getting more money when the 70-30 split is done. Because the reason you got more than 17.5 is because you qualify for the 70-30 alignment, Sean.
Gotcha. And then who funds the CTC? Basically, there's a CTC issue, but who funds the CTC for the time and expenses that they incur for being a CTC?
It's all built into the funds. When the council gives the money, the 17.5, there is money built into the classes, and that's a decision that the county has to work through.
So they can use those for funding the CTC for that time.
If they stay within what the allotments are for the classes.
Okay. Hey, they say it's for a small rural or non-career based, just a time for organizing all that stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. What are the course managers' roles? So I'm going to switch gears. Covered the county training coordinators. Now I'm going to switch to the course managers. So the county training coordinator is going to work to be that person that coordinates the training within the county. There's going to be course managers that, of course, step up and take on some of these roles. Sometimes the CTCs are the course managers for a lot of these classes, and then ultimately many of you are also the instructors also. But we also, when we get into a lot of the bigger counties or even dividing the county up, the CTC might be just how they divide up the money, if you want to say the fiduciary wise. And then what they'll actually do is there'll be a course manager over programs. The course manager needs to make sure that the instructors use the approved curriculum. And in the memo that we put out last week on the 27th, which kind of gave some guidance to FY19, we talked about if it's a firefighter 1 and 2, a hazmat operations class, you have a choice of 2 publishers, Jones and Bartlett, 3rd edition, or IFSTA 6th edition. If you're teaching any of the strategy and tactics classes that are from the NFA or incident safety officer, those type of classes, you have to use the student, and the students have to get the textbook for each course. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in a slide when we get down to instructor. If it's a third party, the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation, VFIS for drivers training, the McNeil drivers training program, any of those standalone third party classes, you have to use their student manual. This is something that was brought to my attention last year in FY18, is that there were a lot of people who are telling the students they don't need to buy the books. You need to buy the books. Part of one of the things when we go to the curriculum and we go with these different publishers, yes, I get it. That's how publishers make money. They sell books. We adopted their curriculum and we expect the student to have the book. You can't have one book for the whole class and share it. You can't have one that's on a shelf in the hall and if people want to look at it. The intent of it is to assign the reading. The intent of it is to use it. And then it's also available as a resource after the training as people move forward. One of the changes that's on the next one says a fire for all classes. If the class is funded with fireworks safety fees, and that's the classes are funded with the 2.3 million this year, you have to submit a flyer 4 weeks in advance so that it can be put on Gov Delivery. One of the things that we still continue to run into with classes is we get people who will share, I didn't know about that class. I didn't know they were doing it over there. I would have went to that one in Warren if I would have known if they were hosting it. I would have went to that one in Sheboygan. So one of the things is that we are putting we are requesting, it's a requirement, it's a flyer for every class. And this includes firefighter 1 and 2 academies. Let's talk about this for a second. Let's say at that firefighter 1 and 2 academy that you say, hey, 24 students is all we're going to take. If you have 24 from your county, fantastic, that class is full. But if you only have 20 from your county, a week or two before that, you need to open that up to the outside, and that's where people can request to be in your classes. One thing that we need to think about is all 83 counties get money and are able to make decisions on what they're going to do with money to meet the needs in their county. However, anybody in the state of Michigan that works for a fire department that's in good standing with Public Act 291 can attend those classes. So, you know, I hear this from folks, hey, I don't want to drive 40 miles to the far end of my county to go to a fire academy when there's one 3 miles away in the next county over. If there are vacancies in those classes, and it doesn't matter whether they're fire officer classes, Q classes, or fire academies, if there are vacancies in that class, other people are able to get into those classes. Now, if you have a Q class, and let's say the instructor says you can only have 36 students in it, let's say a school bus extrication class, and you fill the 36 up with people from your county and you're hosting it, then it's only a county class. But as soon as it drops below that 36 in that case for that extrication class, then it's open to anybody that can attend that. So one of the things that you might get as a course manager, you may have somebody reach out to you and say, hey, I'm with the Sterling Heights Fire Department, and I want to go to that class in Oakland County. If the class has vacancies available, that class is open to them. Also, there is not to be a fee charged for out of county classes. Now, there is a way though, and this is a good time to talk about it, where there can be a fee with every class. Let's say that firefighter 1 and 2 class, you want to give everybody, I don't know, 30 foot of 1/2-inch static commando rope, you want to give them 20 feet of webbing, and you want them to, I don't know, they got to buy 2 t-shirts to be part of the academy. There can be fees that are on top of what is dispersed for the classes, but they have to be charged to every single student. So if you charge them to one student in the class a fee, you have to charge that to everybody in the class. So I want to make this very clear also. Can I partially fund a class? I want to partially fund a firefighter 1 and 2 class with my county money, and then all the townships are going to kick in? Yes, you can. But here's the deal. When you go outside of the fireworks safety fund, any fees that are assessed to those classes, they have to be fair and they have to be consistent with every student in the class. So if that firefighter 1 and 2 class, let's say it's an extra $200 per student, everybody who's in that class has to be charged the $200. You can't say, well, the Decatur Fire Department is hosting this, so we're not going to charge the $200 our people, we're going to charge everybody else. That's not the case. The Training Council has a motion, it passed, it was very clear. If there are any fees involved with any classes, they have to be the same for everybody. Okay.
I had a question, Kevin, on,
yeah.
Could you please repeat who can fill the role of a course manager?
The course manager can be anybody who is basically it's cleared through the county CTC. So I've had it, in most cases, it's going to be an instructor, either a certified or an associate or an instructor 1 or 2. But I have seen it in some counties where maybe a chief would be the course manager. You pretty much need to, everybody's in smoke, so everybody has a smoke number. The problem will come into sometimes is that without being an instructor, you're not going to have rights within smoke.
Okay.
Okay.
What action can or will the Bureau take if an instructor bypasses a CTC with class paperwork?
What actions will we take?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm not real clear on the question.
What action will the
So
Bureau
in any county, so I think what we're saying, first off, if it's a funded class, they can't bypass you because it's the CTC that
Right.
awards or gives the funding.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a fire department, though, that says, I'll use the Grand Rapids Fire Department. I know they started an academy yesterday. They most likely are running that as a standalone academy. They drew a number from our office. The Grand Rapids Fire Department is fully funding that class. They don't have to go out and ask the county if they can run a fire academy. However, if they were going to run that fire academy and they were going to use funds from the county, then it would have to be coordinated through the CTC.
Okay. Then we
I
still
don't know
have
if
some
that answers the question. People can,
It should be.
departments, this is the big thing that I think a lot of times it's a confusion out there. Every county gets 17.5, but if a department has, I don't know, 5,000 in their budget and they want to bring in the guy from New Jersey to do step up in lead class, and they're going to spend 5,000 of their own dollars to bring this guy in, it's their class.
Right.
Now, it would be nice that they would, if they entered in smoke, because it's not funded by us, they don't have to send us a flyer, but they could turn around, and that's the other thing. Somebody might say, well, there's a fee. If it's a state-funded class, as in it's funded with fireworks safety fees, if there's a fee, it has to be the same to everybody else. If the Kentwood Fire Department is funding this class out of their own budget and they want to open it up and sell seats for $50, that's their own business. Can they still draw a state number so that everybody gets a certificate? Absolutely. But that's outside of the county training chairperson.
Okay.
And then there's a good idea to communicate with that person? I think you should.
Right.
I think you should, let them know that you're running a class. So in Kent County, I'd reach out to Mike May and say, hey, we're gonna fund this, and I think that's being a good neighbor. And if there's seats open, why wouldn't you open it to everybody else? But for the majority of the stuff that we're setting forth, what are these responsibilities? A lot of the stuff when we had the follow-up audit last year, the auditor made it very clear to us as the Bureau of Fire Services that we needed to get our house in order. And many of the things that you see here this year that are being listed out here, like you got to have a flyer and you got to submit the schedule and you got to turn in the class sign-in sheets and all that other stuff, that is coming out of the auditors looking at our processes and going, hey, you're giving out $2 million or $2.3 million. You have to show where the money goes and who it went to. And did the training occur? And was it of high quality so that the good people of Michigan know that they got their money's worth?
All right, excellent. And then there's still some confusion for a few questions on the CTC. The original question was, how can a CTC receive money from the fund to manage, basically, so I'm hearing, manage the training for like a small rural county? And so they want to know how that works. How do they get the money? And then how do you know if your county is doing that, is taking money to manage?
It's a case of the county has autonomy. They receive the money, and how they manage the money. I would say this: they have to be accountable for the money, because I can see in the future that the state's going to come in and do an audit on a county, and they're going to ask, hey, where did the money go to? I also have had some stuff come in through the Freedom of Information Act that they'll ask, how was the money dispersed to a county? And they'll want to know who it was dispersed to. And the same thing is, they could come in and then to the county fiduciary, ask them, hey, where did the money go? So, you got to realize, folks, this is $2.3 million. This isn't, this isn't just a couple of $100 going county's ways. Now, this is a minimum of 17.5, and they're asking people to, at some point are going to have to show where the money went. I don't think that still answers the question. I think what they're asking me is, will I fund their fiduciary? And the answer is, currently the way that the funding's set up through the training council, unless they take it out of the fee for the class, that's how they would get that money.
Okay, because the other one is if they're not an instructor, let's say they're not instructing any courses, they're just managing the county. I mean, is there a way for them to get any money out of that? Was kind of the gist of it.
I think it's a county decision. If the county wanted to make a decision, I'm going to throw something out for the sake of conversation. They said, hey, 1% of all that for the administrative side or whatever. But it's coming out of what's coming into the county. There's going to be no extra money coming to the county to be the fiduciary.
Okay. And they said,
and this is another thing too that, Sean, this is probably a good point to bring this up, because I got asked this question recently. This money coming back to the county is not to put money in the bank in a training fund. This money is to come into a county and be dispersed and paid out every year. So, I've heard some things about counties that say, well, we'll only pay the instructors so much an hour, and part of it goes into this. I think if you can show that that's what you're doing, and part of it's going to pay for, if you want to say the fiduciary, if that's how you decide to do it. But I'll also say this, it's not money to be put in the bank and it moves forward years into years. The idea of dispersing the money to the county is that it's a pass-through. The instructors do the work, the counties receive the money's paid out to the instructors.
What if a county is sitting on money? Will anything happen to them?
I think what will happen is that it's going to come up in an audit. And I can also share this with you. We gave out 2 million 2 years ago. We gave out 2 million last year. We're going to give out 2.3. Just quick math, that's 6.3 million. I would expect at some point there is going to be an audit, and they're going to want to know where the money went. And like I said, the whole intent of getting this money is to provide training in the county, and it is to pay the instructors. So I think it's going to come down to, I don't have time to be going out and looking at everyone's books, but I'm also sharing with you that, I'm also sharing that the day's coming, I guarantee it. And the reason I know that is from the FOIA requests that I'm getting. There are people, when you give 17,000 and it gets paid out to a couple people in a county, people start to notice where that's going. And this would probably be a good time to remind folks that anytime you make over $600, you need to be 1099 for that, and you need to be claiming that on your taxes. So, something that's out there is, the state is dispersing money to the counties. The counties then, when they disperse the money out, this is not tax-free money, and you need to make sure that you're following the state and federal laws for taxes.
And if they don't use their full 17.5, it just rolls.
If they don't encumber their 17.5, it comes back to the bureau.
That's one.
If they cancel a class, it comes back to the bureau. I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
But yeah, here's the deal. We basically give you 17,500 in credit. You sign up your classes, and then you have to turn in all the paperwork to get the money. It's not, we give a county 17.5 and they manage it. As the money's dispersed by class, that's how the money goes back to the communities or the counties.
Okay. I had a bunch of
questions. When I talk about moving money, when I talk about moving money, it's not 17.5s in the checking account in Ingham County. It's 17.5 worth of credit in the smoke system is forwarded to Ingham County, and then they sign up their classes, and then the classes get approved by the training coordinator. The paperwork's filled out. Everything's done at the end. The training coordinator checks a box to close out the class, and then the money is then dispersed to the county.
Okay. And so when you were talking earlier about like currently, because we've got a lot of people using those grants, or we did last month. So that money that's getting deposited back to the county's 15 days, that's from that extra money, grants and things like that, not part of the original 17.5 probably.
No, Sean, unless some of the stuff. Yeah, no, some counties actually waited, like in the summertime, they don't do a lot of training. They wait till September, and they're actually using money that was encumbered back in December. It just has to be used up by September 30th.
Okay, and so, you guys might take it back.
Yeah, we did. As classes got canceled, we took the money back. Right. You can't. The money doesn't carry over year to year.
Right.
At the county level.
Okay, excellent. And then one more question. I'll let you keep going, and then I'll just try to keep up with some of these. Sorry, guys, the questions, there's a lot of them here, so if I haven't gotten to you, that's why. That's
why we wanted to do this call tonight, Sean, right?
Yep.
I mean,
for sure.
To talk about, so, hey, hang on for a minute. The cleaning crew's here. I'm going to close the door, so you're going to be a little dead air here for a second.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm working on your questions, guys. There's just quite a few of them here, and we'll get through those. You can also raise your hand if you want to ask something directly to the fire marshal. Try to keep it on whatever slide we're on, though. The questions, it's always good discussion.
All right, sorry about that, everybody. It's cleaning night at the Bureau of Fire Services.
Of course. Due to Rule 29.374, how do I make a department comply with survey as a CTC, and what if they don't or refuse to participate?
Well, I think one of the things we're going to talk about here a little bit is if they're, one of the things that we're looking at, it's an education part of it, is I need something back from you as a county training person to say that they didn't comply, or hey, I sent it to the chief. The chief said that he isn't going to do it. You did your due diligence by reaching out to them. But what I find in some places, and I've found this moving around the state, is that after the fact, people say, well, nobody even asked us for our opinion. So one of the things is, ideally, you're trying to get every department in your county to provide feedback to you. If you can show us kind of a paper trail, or the fact that, hey, I reached out to them and I sent it to this chief and they didn't do anything. I mean, we'll take your survey, but you're going to have to show us that you tried to solicit everybody in the county.
All right, and then we'll just do one more here before, and we'll keep going. How does the state funding apply to regional training centers, and do the RTCs have to comply with Open Meetings Act?
Do the RTCs need to, with the Opens Meeting? What are you talking about?
I'm assuming if they have an open meeting to discuss their training, if it has to follow the rules for open meeting, as far as having an agenda posted, everybody needs to know about it so much time in advance.
Well, the RTCs are granted status by the state.
Okay.
And really, the whole intent behind an RTC back in the day was so that somebody could go to a fire academy, like a college that wasn't a member of a department, and get a pre-service certificate. The RTCs do not receive any money directly from the Bureau of Fire Services. So as we disperse money to the counties, it's up to the counties. Now, if a county decides that they want to work with an RTC, or in some cases, RTCs are the fiduciaries in some counties and they coordinate it all, you can do that. But we're not giving money directly when we give out the money every year. But an RTC can come, give you an example of they can put in for a grant and can be awarded a grant when we give out the money that people didn't use. But there's no money being given to them directly coming out of when the disbursements are made to the county. That's the decision at the county level to include the.
And then the as far as the Open Meetings Act goes, from my perspective, from what I know about it, they have to be a group of elected officials, or a group appointed by elected officials would fall under that.
So give you an example, when the training council gets together, now that it's at 9, if there's 5 training council members together, that meeting has to be advertised. So give you an example, we do these work sessions. We're not necessarily doing a training council meeting. We just know that it's possible that we could have a quorum, everybody could show up. So we advertise it as, there's a chance that there could be a quorum there, and we advertise that to meet the Opens Meeting Act.
Yep, I'd say if you have a question about that, I'd ask whatever legal counsel you have representing that, if it's a county, city, whatever. But just to keep on the safe side. You want to do one more, or you want to keep going?
Sean, yeah, that's something that we should probably talk about is, give you an example, the curriculum committee is made up of a bunch of groups. And one of the things that we have to watch with the curriculum committee is that if we get too many members that are on council on the curriculum committee, we could have a quorum. So one of the things that we try our best to do is business should be conducted at the training council meeting, and it shouldn't be being done throughout the month. So unless there's a quorum, it's not an open meeting.
Gotcha. All right, and then going back to the funding, I believe, would it be better to set up like a 501(c) for the committee? That's the fiduciary.
That's something that you'll have to work out in each county. I can share this. There's RTCs that do it, which are colleges. So they already, they disperse it. I don't know what the arrangement that, everybody has with these RTCs. But I'll share this, that there are places where municipalities do it. So Wexford County, Cadillac is the fiduciary. So the funds actually go to the city of Cadillac, and the city of Cadillac actually disperses the fees back to the instructors.
Okay, excellent. I had a question here too, but I'm not. So they're asking taxes must be withheld by the county. No, I can answer that. So you can take a break.
It's not taxes.
Yeah.
Anytime you make over $600, there needs to be a 1099, which just acknowledges that I paid you more than $600.
Yeah, I don't
So
think any
nobody's
county wants to
withholding
do that.
nobody's withholding any taxes. So let's say that I'll make it easy. Let's say we got 15,000 to do a fire academy, Sean, and you and I split it. We each got $7,500. That's clearly over $600. We should get a 1099 that says that we were given this money, and then we have to claim it on our taxes.
Right. And then Mecosta County just said that they do use a 501c3 for their county, for Mecosta County. So
yeah, I know Berry County uses their United Way. So their United Way office actually coordinates is their fiduciary.
okay, I'll give you a break from these. I'll answer some of these. I'll try to type some of these answers, guys, some of these other ones, and I'll let you keep going.
Okay, so the next thing that's on this slide, we talk about a course manager. You have to submit your schedule for your firefighter 1 and 2, or your firefighter 1 or your firefighter 2 class. I know that's a little confusing. If you're just a volunteer or paid on-call firefighter, firefighter 1 is all you need to be a firefighter in the state of Michigan. Sometimes folks will just have a 2 class after the fact to bring people up because they want to go on a fire officer, or if you do a 1 and 2 class combined. Our point here is if you're doing a firefighter class, whether it meets any of those 3 criterias, you have to submit a schedule that gives the location where the classes are going to be, who the instructors are going to be for the chapter. Now, I realize that if we have, let's say we'll use Sean, you and I, you're going to teach forcible entry, and I don't know, you get sick and I fill in for you for the night, then you on the roster, you could put down there, Abby was sick, Selmeyer taught, okay? But what we're looking at is that we do look at these course schedules. We do from time to time have training coordinators that go out and actually check in on classes. In Public Act 291, with the approval of the fire marshal, any council member can check in on a class at any time. Okay. So with that being said, we want to be able to look at the schedule. So I'll use council member Greg Janik from Saugatuck. He says, hey, I want to go to Berry County and I want to check in on the academy. And he says, what night do they meet? And we said, well, they meet on Thursdays and they meet on Saturday, every 3rd Saturday. So on Thursday night, we look at the schedule and go, hey, this Thursday night, Sean Abbey is teaching the hose chapter. When Greg gets over there, it should be Sean teaching the hose chapter. Here's the other thing. If the location is it's going to be at the Hastings Fire Station, now I get it. You might go down the street to a park or something, but it should originate and be in that area. Where we've run into some problems, I've had people that we've sent out to check on classes and got there only to find out that the class had been moved. If you're going to deviate from the schedule of where a class is going to be, you need to reach out to the regional training coordinator. Okay.
How do you know? How do you know? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you know if the county's filled out that survey?
They're actually returning the survey results to us.
I mean, how do you know if your county has, though? I mean, is there any idea of putting that online or anything? So if I want to know if Kent County's submitted theirs, is there any place I can check that?
There's no place to check online.
Okay.
Here's one of the things that I think is very important. I don't need to publish a list of who those 26 counties are. I don't believe that. We reached out to them. We shared that we didn't get it from them. If you do the math, there's 50 some counties that followed the directions and turned in that survey. As of, it was supposed to be September 1st, but we waited till the end of September, right? So we know that the emails went out. We know that the emails are getting there, and I'm going to take the positive side of 50 some people did what they needed to do. And if you're wondering about your survey, that would be reach out to your regional coordinator.
Okay, and here's a can of worms. Are you ready for a can of worms or not?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So what about departments that encumber a lot of money just to have classes canceled? I basically wrote in my text back that really it's the onus is on the CTC and then that county, the people in that county, to not give monies to departments that are doing that. But on the flip side of that, we're seeing it in our area where people are both putting in classes and then people are signing up for classes. I just had one recently where I had an IFF peer support class. It was full with 30 people for weeks before. People were calling me, and then with the last week, 6 people bailed. I've heard there's going to be some different things too that we're looking at to get people
Yeah,
to.
we are. So when you sign up for a class, right? So you go in there and you sign up and say, hey, I want to take that peer class, right? That's a good example. The class goes down on a certain day, and at the end of the day, the course manager goes in and completes the roster, right? Well, to unenroll a student is really 3 clicks, and then you got to go back out and come back into the roster. So out of fairness to our course managers, we've been having the folks mark fail. And some people are going, hey, wait a minute, why did I get a fail in my training record? You failed to appear. If you see a fail on a class that has a test, like a firefighter 1 and 2, well, you didn't have a passing score. But when you start looking at some of these classes where you have, 100 people sign up and only 60 show up on the day of the class, I think it's an unfair burden on the course manager to go in and remove 40 names from the roster. So people are like, well, I don't like it with that F on my training record. Then you need to unenroll from the class prior to this, to the course manager doing the roster. And even if you wake up in the morning and you have a stomach ache and you aren't going to go to the class, you went in and signed yourself up and smoke, you can go in, smoke, and unenroll yourself. If you're still on the roster after the class is run and the course manager does the paperwork, I'm sharing with the course managers. It's real easy. It's 1 box to click, fail. Hit the fail on anything that's other than with an exam. If somebody was asking, what's the fail mean? You failed to appear.
Okay. And then are you still receiving money if you don't turn in a survey?
With the county training?
Yep.
No.
If I don't turn in a survey, I'm not getting any money?
No.
Okay.
You're not turning in the money until you send in a survey.
Okay.
It says in the act that if you don't comply with the act, that the fire marshal may withhold your funds. And by not doing the survey, you're not complying with the act. That one's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. Okay. Just had a question about it. And then I had a question. This could be an interesting one. How do you change your CTC? How do you change your coordinator?
If you have, well, first off, in the rules, it talks about the Bureau of Fire Services with the majority of the council. There will be a rules process on how to do that in the future. I will say this right now, though, I've had counties come to me and say, hey, Kevin Sellmeyer is doing a terrible job as a county coordinator. What are our options? They've gotten together and had the fire departments meet in the county, and they actually then submit us a name that says that Kevin Sellmeyer is no longer the county training chairperson, and Sean Abbey is now the county training chairperson. By getting it from the Chiefs Association, in writing that they're making the switch, we will allow them to make a switch to the county training chairperson.
Okay.
One of the things you have to look at in all these counties, other than one county in the UP where there's 2 fire departments, right? The majority of these departments might have 6 to 20 some departments in their county. If you're not happy, and when I say you're not happy, there again, it's a democratic process though. It's getting the departments, getting the chiefs together and having that conversation. We need to know who to send the money to, and we need to know who to, if you want to say, converse with to take care of the business between the Bureau and each county. But ultimately, the county has a say in who is the CTC.
Okay. And then that money, if they let's say I was a county and I didn't do my survey and I'm not getting my money, where's that money going? Going back in the fund?
I would say when it's not encumbered by December 31st, that would be, I'll say this, I want to save that discussion for a council meeting if somebody doesn't do their survey.
Okay. So there's a question on that.
Because it talks about in Public Act 291 that if the money isn't encumbered and the money isn't, that ultimately it's the council that gives out the money. So,
okay.
I would think for $17,500, which is the minimum, that I don't think it's unrealistic to ask a county to survey their members.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Just keep on going. I'll keep answering these as much as I can.
So submit one of the things that course managers have to do is you have to submit all class sign-in sheets. So if on the schedule, I don't know, you divide it out, you do the Saturdays, you do all the chapters in the book, and at the end of the day, it equals 46 sessions that the class met, then there needs to be 47 sign-in sheets. And at the bottom of each sign-in sheet, the instructor must print and sign their name and attest that they taught all of the objectives for that chapter or that session of hands-on. So one of the things that you want to also look at, and why it's important that we're doing these class sign-in sheets, and when the auditors was here, is that number one, they want to look at see who is instructing, but also how many did they instruct, and that's why I say eventually it will come down most likely to the money thing. But also one of the things that we want to look at is to make sure that the objectives are getting covered and that the class is getting fully taught. So this might not be a bad time to bring up the fact we talked about training coordinators or the training council or the fire marshal or a training region coordinator stopping by your training session. I can guarantee you this, we are not going to show up at 6 o'clock at night when it starts. We're probably going to show up at 9:30 at night to make sure that it's still going on there. And I get this question a lot, and I usually get it after the fact when a bunch of people don't do well on a test, or people feel that the instructor cut a lot of corners and didn't teach the class the way they should have. And when I say teaching the way they should, I'm not talking about style, I'm talking about covering all of the information. And that's one of the reasons why the students should have that manual, so they have it, so they can see it. And that manual can be electronic. You don't have to print these things off. You could send it, say, hey, here's the link for the PDF, and they could have it downloaded on their phone. They could have it downloaded on their iPad, their computer. Use the technology. But here's the deal. The students should be able to see what are the objectives of the class, and they're going to have an idea. And many times I hear that people complain because the instructor shortchanged them. And then when I talk to the instructor, well, I thought they'd want to go home early and such. Most adults that are going through classes want to learn. That's why they're there, and they're trying to advance themselves. And cutting corners there tends to be, I get a lot of complaints from people who feel cheated, not necessarily who have sour grapes against the instructor. It's more that they feel that they didn't get the learning experience that they thought they were going to get. So we'll be out and about, and we'll come around, and we brought on a few more training coordinators, so we got to stay a little better covered, and you're going to see us out and about, and we want to make sure learning is occurring. And you could say, well, what if it's a 3-hour chapter and an IFSTA thing on, I don't know, fire extinguishers? There's plenty of stuff that you can work on for the other hour. Make sure your students are bringing their gear to training every night. Make sure they're bringing an SCBA in a case if you think you're going to have extra time. But you can always be tying knots. You can always be donning SCBAs. You can be working on hands-on skills that are going to be on that state exam. And that's what we're trying to make sure that everybody gets the best learning environment. So everybody clear sign-in sheets. If the class meets 4 times, there's going to be 4 sheets. You have to be able to account for the hours for the class, coupled with the number of sign-in sheets. And the class cannot be closed out. TJ or Dan will not close out a class until the sign-in sheets are sent to the email box that's specified for the sign-in sheets to go to. Hazmat operation classes. We have found that some people are doing hazmat at the very beginning of a fire academy, so they do it maybe in October, November, and then people aren't testing until April or May. So what we found out in talking with people is typically the hazmat portion of the test goes better for students when it's fresh in their head. So we're putting forth in the practices here that the hazmat operations course has to be run within 45 days of the state exam, so that that information is fresh for the students when they get to the state exam. And then the last thing is all courses must be closed out and smoke within 30 days. That hasn't changed. That's been there for a long time. We're continuing to have to chase people down to close out classes. TJ and Dan know that about 45 days after the beginning of the previous month, they're looking to close out classes. The reason we want to close out classes is, number one, we want the students to get their certificates. We want to make the payments back to the counties. And further, if the class was canceled, we want to take it out of the system. Any class that's entered into our system, the auditors are looking for that class to be run. So you can't leave a course open-ended. And that slides us on to the next slide, which is, I got a poll question there, Sean.
All right, let me get some poll launched up here.
So we talked about this real early in the last hour. When do classes need to be entered into smoke for each county? And I think you're going to open a poll. People can vote.
Yep, should be there.
Okay.
So go ahead and everybody click on that real quick. Looks like we got about 83%, 90, 61%. I'll give you a couple more seconds for everybody, and then I'm gonna close the poll. So get on there and vote. All right, we're about 70%. All right, we're gonna close it up and share the results. There you go.
It looks like we're up to 88 people participating tonight. That's great.
Yes.
Glad everybody's listening. So, and what did the poll say, Sean?
It says, can you see it on yours or not?
No, I can't.
Oh, okay.
No.
Says 77% said December 31st, 2018.
And that is correct. All money must be encumbered by then. Also, after December 31st, every county is required to send and I'll use this disclaimer again, and then everybody got a little giggle out of it, but if you want to do a Word document to list out what you're funding for the year and break out your money, if you want to create an Excel spreadsheet, go for it. If you want to take a bar napkin and write it out with a Sharpie and take a picture of it and send it to us, I'll take that too. But I need every county to send in what they ended up encumbering for their money. And this is very important because we had counties last year that when they turned in their encumbered, if you want to say their encumbered documentation, we had folks that thought they funded classes and they didn't. And so then we went back and we worked with the course managers and the county CTCs to make sure that these courses got funded appropriately. So it's a checks and balance that we're looking out for you guys out there in the counties to make sure that you get your money and you get to spend it the way you want it. All right, next one.
All right.
Reading that next one. I'm not moving. Why am I not moving? All right. How many weeks in advance does a flyer for a course that is funded with fireworks safety fees need to be emailed to the Bureau of Fire Services?
I'm looking. I've got it in here. If a class is funded with fireworks safety fees, when does the flyer for the class need to be submitted prior to this class start? I had to change them a little bit because some of them wouldn't fit in the poll.
That's good.
Polls in progress. Everybody click on there. It's really fast. So we can get through this. All right, we're up to 75% already. We're closing the poll. And we've got 77 people said 4 weeks.
4 weeks is the answer. So realize that all courses need to be entered into smoke 6 weeks in advance. We'll give you a couple weeks to get that flyer to us, but we do have to get that flyer. And I know somebody out there is going to ask this question, what if they don't send in their flyer? Well, if we don't have it 4 weeks in advance, don't be surprised that TJ and Dan are reaching out to you and that your class could be canceled. So we want you to run your classes. We want you to spend your money, but we also want people to know where classes are going on because we want to fill up seats in classes so that the most training can be done by the whole fire service across the state. Okay. All right. One more poll question. Hazmat operations must be taught within how many days of the firefighter exam?
We're almost to 70% already, so I'm going to close it up. And they got 92%. It says 45 days.
Yep, 45 days is the correct answer. 45 days from your state exam is the earliest you can run hazmat operations. So work that out so that we make sure. That's one thing that the students have suggested coming back to us, and feedback is very important to us, is that they wish the hazmat would be at the end of the class, and they asked, and we're going to help them in the future for people that are going through it. This would be a good place to talk about hazmat classes. So in your firefighter 1 and 2 academy, hazmat operations is actually included in the lump sum. You do not have to have a standalone hazmat operations class. If, let's say you have 15 students in your academy though, and you could have 25 in a hazmat ops, a separate number could be drawn that people from outside, if there's seats available, could be in it. But the hazmat operations class has been funded as part of the fire academy, and you cannot get extra funds just because those extra people are in the class. Everybody good on that? Instructor MOUs, it's that time of year. If you're an instructor, you need to log into Smoke. You need to click the box on the MOU. What are you doing when you're clicking the box on the MOU? You are acknowledging that you are going to follow the rules of the Bureau of Fire Services. You are going to follow the motions that are set forth by the training council, and that you are going to teach the classes to the objectives. You're going to use the textbook. You're going to enter into Smoke at the right time. You're going to make sure the students have manuals and all that good stuff. We're going to leave the MOU part of it open until the 30th of November. On the December 1st, we are actually going to turn off instructor rights to the folks who didn't do the MOU. One of the things that came out in the audit was to be an instructor, they wanted to make sure that everybody acknowledged on an annual basis that they were going to follow the rules and they were going to do the things the way that the rules are set forth, or the policies and procedures. And so what happens after November 30th, if I didn't do my MOU, you have to write a letter to the fire marshal asking for your rights to be turned back on. And some would say, well, why are you doing that? Because we have a training coordinator, a region coordinator that's going to take the time and the effort to turn it off. And we also have a region coordinator who has to take the time and effort to turn it back on. We would hope that you're in the Smoke system on a regular basis, especially if you're an instructor. This is nothing new. This is the 3rd year for the MOU. 3 years ago, you did it on paper. Last year, you did it online. This year, we'll do it online. And so MOUs for instructors, log into Smoke. Just by acknowledging the box, that's all it takes. After the 30th, we're turning off the instructors. This also gives us a better idea when I get asked by council and other folks, how many instructors do you have? And I can say we have this many active instructors, because we can actually go in and look at how many did the MOU. Instructors. So we talked about the county training chairperson. We talked about the course manager, and now we need to talk
Kevin,
about the instructor.
Before we get too far beyond this, is there a way that an RTC or CTC can check to see if the instructors have acknowledged the MOU?
I think that's an internal thing that they need to reach out to their instructors and ask them.
Okay.
There's nothing. The system is very hard for me to run basically a report. And even if I ran the report, I would get a whole list of instructors, and I don't know who's working for, some people work for a couple different RTCs.
Right.
So that would probably be a good housekeeping thing for an RTC, is to actually reach out to their instructor cadre and remind them or make sure that they did it.
Is there a way to get a paper copy or a PDF to where the CTCs or whatever, or even like a fire department instructor training center could keep a copy so that they know that they're all
I think it's a case of it's a case of the instructor logging in. The system doesn't have the capabilities to do that.
Okay, these are just questions.
Yeah, no, good questions, but I think I don't have the capabilities. And here's the other thing: just because somebody's working for you at an RTC or even at the county level, they're entering into an agreement with you to teach. Their training records and other stuff is actually their property.
Okay.
So, instructor roles. Every student must either have a paper or electronic student manual for all the classes. So I get it. Printing off a bunch of stuff costs a lot of money, and maybe that's not what you want to do. And I'd be straight up with you. I would rather have my stuff electronically as a PDF, so I can put it on my iPad so that I can go back and look at it. And even as an instructor, on the 1-in-1 site for the instructors, which is hosted by the Michigan Fire Instructor Association, they actually, on their 1-in-1 site, they actually have the manuals for both the student and the instructor for the NFA classes. If they're third party, you have to get it from them, and if it's from any of the publishers. But the student needs a copy, and they need to have it available for them. This is going to be very important as we move into FY22, and I'm talking about FY19, which runs from October 1st of 18 to September 30th of 19. But in FY20, which starts a year from now, there are going to be certification exams for every classification, and the students are going to need these books in order to study for the exams. So we'll talk about that later in the program, but everybody, tests are coming for all certifications, and they're going to need the books. So this is also a time to realize that curriculum is adopted by council and that you need to use it. Need to fully teach the objectives. That's why you're signing the sheet at the end saying that you did. And yes, can you enhance it and make it better? Sure you can. Can you share your experience and knowledge? I hope you do. But at a minimum, the objectives have to be taught. Also, you need to use all the student activities. So I'm going to give you an example of this. I found out how some folks are, if you want to say, blasting through classes. I can get that class done in a lot less hours than it should be done. Well, I've only got 6 students, and we'll make one big group of 6, and we'll only do one activity, even though there's 6 of them for Chapter 2 and Incident Safety Officer. The Incident Safety Officer class was designed for every one of those exercises to be done to look at different situations. So in the past, if you had 20 students and there's 6 questions, you might divide them up into groups and you would assign those. We expect you to do the activities. We expect those activities to get covered. This is the biggest complaint that I hear from students. I went and took a class from an instructor who was from the rural side and didn't want to do any of the other construction types. I went to a class in the city and they didn't do any of the other, you know, the warehouse, or they didn't do the high rise, or they didn't do the house fire, or they didn't do the ordinary constructed taxpayer. If there's a scenario in the course and it's part of the objectives of the class and it's part of the student activities in the manuals, the instructor should be teaching that, and they should be walking through those so that people learn how to fight fires in different types of buildings. And this is the other thing I hear a lot of times. Well, you all are from the city, so we're going to skip that chapter, or you're all from the rural, we're going to skip these chapters. Nobody knows where they're going to end up geographically, and there's also people who take these classes who are going to end up in another department, and you'll have different types of buildings and uses. And the idea here is to try to make everybody as well-rounded as we can. So student activities need to be done. Need to print and sign the class signing sheets. When I say print your name on them and sign them, so that when we look at these rosters and somebody says, hey, who taught forcible entry in the fire academy, I should be able to clearly read your name and yours, and then we could match up the signature. So if a question was to come back about, hey, something happened on the night we were doing forcible entry, we'd have a good idea of where to start. I also will share this. There's many times where I hear fantastic things about instructors who are teaching classes, and we go and look at the roster and I can't read the signature, and then going back through it, and then only to find out that the course manager was on the paperwork and not the instructor. So the instructor side of it is also so that we can pass on great jobs to people too. So it's not just about holding people accountable, it's also for complimenting people on what they're doing out there, because we got a lot of great instructors that are doing great stuff statewide.
That question.
So what is the
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The question on MOU2, they want to clarify. They want to know if you get a paper copy to agree to. They couldn't.
No, it's done electronically in Smoke now.
Okay.
So the paper copy was done the first year. The idea was we captured in order to be an active instructor, you had to do one on paper. The state has that on file now. Every year after that, you click the box to acknowledge the MOU. Okay, but it's not a paper one that everybody had to fill out and then send back.
Okay, if you didn't do that paper one, where's that at?
That's a great question. I think what they're saying is they're a brand new instructor, right? And they've never done a paper one.
They just kind of said, yeah, they just wanted to know.
Well, when you fill out all your paperwork and everything's turned in to be certified as the instructors, a lot of that stuff is covered in the paperwork. So
okay.
The idea of the MOU of doing electronic was, this is what we heard, and this is prior to myself being the fire marshal. This is stupid that we got to fill out this sheet of paper, sign it, and send it back to the state. So one of the things that the Bureau of Fire Services looked at in working with Lara is they said, you know what, let's just have a box on there that you acknowledge that you're going to follow the policies, procedures, and the rules and the Public Act as an instructor, and that's what you're doing when you click the box.
Okay, and then I've got someone with a hand up here. Richard?
Sure.
Richard, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Hey,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Kevin mentioned the one-on-one site that it is a secret password, and it's like pulling teeth to get that secret password from anyone.
It's hosted by the Michigan Fire Instructor Association. You do not have to be a member to get that password, but you do have to get the password from them.
It's been requested and received no response.
All right. Have you reached out directly to Don Bigger?
Not Don, but it was someone else.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share Don Bigger's phone number with you.
Okay.
And I would give Don a call and share that with him, because one of the things is that they're hosting it, but we want to be able to, people have to have access to it. So.
Right. Evidently, the password changed about 3 months ago, and it wasn't ever updated to anyone.
Okay. I'm not aware of that. Like I said, they host the site, so that would be a good question. You could reach out to TJ or Dan, but the actual password comes from the Inspector Association.
Thanks.
Okay. It's not hosted by the Bureau.
Thanks, Richard.
All right. Question: when is the deadline to log into Smoke to acknowledge your instructor FY19 MOU?
You're making me work here.
You said you wanted polls, Sean. We're gonna have polls. Come on.
There, it's up there. If you can take a, when's the deadline to log into Smoke to acknowledge? I don't know if I asked you while they're answering this. Somebody asked me what's if they do not acknowledge their MOU.
Yep.
What's
if they don't click that box,
yeah,
on the deadline, they're going to get turned off.
Okay.
You have to click the box in order to acknowledge the MOU. If you don't acknowledge it, then apparently you're not too interested in being an instructor. Because that's really what the box is about, is that you want to be an instructor for another year.
Okay. And 91%.
And I'll turn it back on. It's just you got to write that letter, right? So.
Yep. 91% said November 30th, 2018.
Okay, fantastic. Good. All right, let's talk about training funds. So one of the things that, I've got up in here, the money's distributed, right? It goes to the organized fire departments. And the reason I have this, if you go all the way down to the bottom, and I don't want to read this all the way to you, but it says that during the current and prior fiscal years, and that has completed or not, it says compliance with the incident reporting requirements under Section 4 of Public Act 207. So one of the things that we want to bring this up, it says during the 12 months preceding an application under this act, we put out a clarification memo about a month ago that talked about this and said, hey, we want to make sure everybody understands that in FY19, which we're currently in, we need to make sure that everybody does their fire reports. Because what is going to happen when you get to FY20 is if a fire department hasn't done their fire reports, they're not going to be entitled to the fire safety fees fund. So when we're giving everybody ample notice, we're sharing with everybody. If you're kind of in the rears a little bit, you can go back and you can update it. You can always update your MFERS. You can go through but you need to make sure. Now, A way that you can check that, if you go out to the Bureau of Fire Services website and you go to MFERS, the fastest way I find to get to our website is type in Fire Training MI for Michigan and hit search. When you get to the LARA website, you're going to land on our webpage, on the training page. Off to the left, you toggle over and hit MFERS. I've instructed Ron and Howard that on the 20th of the month, she will print off a list. Now, if the 20th occurs on a Saturday or Sunday, she'll do it on the following Monday. But on the 20th of the month, she is printing a PDF off. It has every fire department listed, and it will tell you whether or not your MFERS is in there. Why do I bring this up? You have until the 15th of the month to actually put in your MFERS, okay, for the previous month. So I'm giving even a 5-day grace even further. If on the 20th, we're going to run the report. That report will be published monthly on the MFERS page, and it will be a PDF. It's about 250 some pages long. It's in numerical order by counties. So give you an example, Kent County is county 81, or excuse me, 41. So I would have to go all the way down through the list to get to the 41 counties. In there, each fire department will be broken out, and it will tell you whether or not MFERS captured your fire reports.
Your poll still, Kevin, your poll's still showing. I don't know. You're not sharing your. Yeah, I don't know why. I've got it closed over here on my side. How about now? That's mine's still showing the poll.
Mine says sharing.
What's on your screen?
The FY20 slide.
All right, that's weird.
How about now?
Let me.
You just clicked on your poll thing.
Yeah, no, I just tried to click it off. It's still showing the poll. I'm not sure why.
Okay. Any tips on people can see your screen? I've got that hit. Let me hit it again. How about now?
It's there. You go. I don't know what happened, but there you go.
Yeah, it must have been. Maybe it timed out.
I've got it. So, I've got a question too. If you have a quick second.
I'm going to click to the next slide. Do you see that?
I got training funds up right now. David, you had a question? David? Oh, it's not. He doesn't have a mic.
Okay.
All right, David, you have to type in your thing because I can't open your mic. It's not working. So, what slide are you on now, Kevin?
I'm on the training fund 20, and now I'm
okay.
No, I'm not. Now mine isn't allowing me to go anywhere.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going back up. So training funds FY20. Each fire department must complete MFERS reports. The 12-month period that we outlined in the memo that was sent out, it's August 1st, 2008 through July 31st of 19. You ask, why did we go back to August? Because come the end of July, we're going to have to go through and find out who did their fire reports for 12 consecutive months. If you're missing a month at that point, there's always an opportunity. Like I said, you can always go back and upload it. And I would ask you, the department should be going out and they should be checking that PDF that Rhonda puts up every month to see whether their stuff went into the system. There's a widely, how do I say, it's almost like urban folklore that all the reports come to the state. Not a single report comes to the state of Michigan. All the fire reports go to an MFERS bucket, and then Rhonda goes in and claims the reports as Michigan reports and brings them over. In the process of bringing them over and claiming the Michigan reports, that's the report that she's running her PDF off of, and that's that we have those reports. If your reports are not showing up when Rhonda runs that, and you could go in there, I know a couple weeks ago, or she ran it, and so the August reports are in there. That was done on September 20th. You can go back and look, and you can also look at the previous months. It has them going back like a year, so you can see whether or not your data is in there. If it's not, I would try to upload it again, and if it's still not there, then you need to reach out to Rhonda Howard. And Rhonda's been taking care of MFERS for years. I'll also give this disclaimer. If you're using the MFERS software, which is free to everybody, and you can be uploading your stuff at any time, I know there's departments out there that use it and their stuff is current to that day. It's many departments out there are using third-party software, whether it's Image Trend or Firehouse or a whole bunch of other ones. I've seen some cases where the third-party software isn't talking to the national MFers right. I want to be very clear that that is between you and your third-party software vendor. It's not between the Bureau of Fire Services. So it's not our job to troubleshoot your Firehouse or troubleshoot your Image Trend or troubleshoot your Alpine system. You bought the software, you're using it to manage your data. You need to work with your software companies to make sure that it talks to the MFers server every month, okay?
Yeah,
Any
Kevin,
questions on that?
will this be available, this PowerPoint be available on the website or anything like that?
Yeah, I can make it available.
Okay.
Yeah, why not?
That's been a question. And then
Yeah.
who provides the updates? So they're wondering about the one-on-one site, like the new leadership courses are coming out. Do those stay current?
Well,
for
the new
instructors?
leadership, we're still trying to get the stuff that's on there right now is the most current stuff.
Okay.
I know Dan Hammerberg went out and actually checked that stuff recently for us.
Okay. And someone said you can call Rick Van Horn too, because he does the website.
Yeah.
The one
Actually, Rick is the secretary treasurer, so but they host the site, which is a great thing to have it as a resource. And I'll also say this, and this goes back to when I was on the board, you do not have to be a member to get access to the one-on-one site. So if you go to their website, they've got every region has like Mark Cleveland over in West Michigan is the regional guy, and Ray Wilson's over in the Saginaw area, been there for years. They've got the state divided up. So you all reach out to those folks and let them know if you're not getting what you need. Okay.
Cool.
Any questions on this FY20? Because I kind of have a magic ball and I can see where we're going to be at in a year when people are going, I didn't know I had to do my fire reports. Well, it's now in Public Act 291. It is a requirement. The question is, and this is a good question, what if one fire department in the county, I'm going to use Kent County, Sean, I'm going to use your department. Kentwood says we're not doing fire reports, just for the sake of discussion here tonight.
Hallelujah.
Then what is going to happen? Yeah, what is going to happen is that the money will be dispersed to Kent County, and Kentwood will not be able to use any of those funds until they have 12 consecutive months of reporting. So if somebody, I don't know, doesn't start till December and we get around to next July and they only got 6 months or 7 months, they can either go back in and put in what was there before, or they're going to have to continue on before they're eligible. And this is going to be kind of a mess, because the council has already talked about this, that if you're not in compliance with the MFers, then you're not entitled to the money. So I give you an example on a fire academy. If a fire academy is 16 grand and there's 10 students, do the math, that's 1,600 a student. If you're a non-compliant fire department, you're gonna pay your fair share for a seat in that class, and it's based on the number of students, based on the expenditure. You're looking at coming up with $1,600. So, people say, why should I do the fire reports? Well, if you have to start paying for training out of your pocket, and it is in the Public Act, and the Public Act was adopted by the legislature and signed into law by the governor. So it will be our job to enforce that. My hope is that everybody does their fire reports, and we're going to be out and about talking to groups and doing things like tonight. And there are checks and balances on our website. Like I said, you can go in there and see where you're at with your department, but it is a requirement to get training money in the future.
Cool.
So what's coming in the future? Well, computer-based testing is coming. One of the things that I shared by the time we get to FY20 is that we'll have a certification exam for Instructor 1, Instructor 2. We'll have a certification exam for Fire Officer 1, Fire Officer 2, Fire Officer 3, Fire Officer 4. We're going to have one for Inspector. Actually, the Inspector process is through the NFPA process. That's already there. We're not going to reinvent the wheel there. But there are going to be different certification processes, fire investigator, different things like that. And there will be a test. Our idea, what we're looking for is for each county to identify at least one place where we can do the computer-based testing, and the training coordinator will come in. It's pretty cool. I had a couple of our training coordinators to the Bureau on Friday. We were We were playing with it a little bit. We wanted to make sure it validated, and they were taking the tests, and by the time you get out to your car, you have the results. So it's kind of cool for the students that they literally are in Muskegon County did their test. We did a beta test in Muskegon County. They took their test and got out to their car, and they knew whether they passed or not. So you're going to get your results faster than ever as we move forward with this computer-based testing.
That's awesome. One question I had about that is, what's going to be the reading levels for these the testing, the minimum reading levels?
Yeah, well, one of the things is if somebody has an IAP, so they have some reading disabilities that they've been diagnosed with, they can always still have a reader. The reader will read the test to them off of the computer, okay? But all of the IFSTA and Jones and Bartlett are like at a 7th grade reading level. So if somebody has a level lower than that, there's a way through ADA and such to have accommodations. And I would encourage the course managers to work with the students so that they have the ability to have a reader. And pen and paper isn't going away, because if we get to a testing site and I don't know, the power's out or we can't get internet or something, we will still have the test that we'll be able to give by paper. But the thing is, if you do it by paper, you're not going to see your results until 5 business days of when we receive it here at the Bureau of Fire Services. So,
okay, terrific.
And that's the other thing that is a good thing to point out. You know, I hear people say, well, we're going to send it to the state and it's going to take forever. 5 days from the 5 business days from the day we receive the packet in the mail, it's graded. And we're hitting that metric 100% of the time.
All right. And
so
is there any
doing that for over a year?
Is there any way that the BFS would be looking at going with a second party or a third party vendor for the NFIRS?
You mean as far as us supplying another one?
Yep.
No. Nope.
Okay.
Nope. If NFIRS, the original software, it's free. It's available. The federal government pays for it. It's available to every fire department in the United States. Anything that's done with third party, that's a contract that you enter into with that vendor.
All right, and then who has the responsibility to check for the NFIRS compliance to make sure? And in that same thing, there's 2 questions here.
You mean at the department?
Yep, and then who bills and figures out all the billing for those non-NFIRS compliant departments? And
it'll be the course manager and the instructor.
Okay.
So to give you an example, if we're doing a fire officer class, Sean, and your department wasn't compliant, it's going to be known that if anybody from Kentwood comes or signs up for it, and if it's a class, I don't know, divide up the math, it's $30. They're going to expect to collect $30 from you for you to be in the class.
Okay. Somebody
that memo is already out. The council has already approved the process on how we will divide it. You know, it's basically take the number of students by what the class costs, divide it up, and that's the class. And that's no different if somebody from EMS or a police officer wants to be in a funded class.
Mm-hmm.
This fireworks safety fee money is only to train firefighters. If they're or public safety officers that are part of an organized fire department, okay? If it's, I'll use Grand Rapids that has a separate police department. If there's 3 cops sitting in a class, the instructor is required to collect a fee from them.
Okay. And somebody said they did the computer testing for the instructor 2. And they said it was very cool. Went really good. He must have taken a different instructor 2 test than the one I took, because the one I took was not.
Yeah, the last one we did, the one in April, that was at the one that we did at Lansing Community College. We did it online or computer based. I don't want to use online because it isn't that you can bring your own device and do it in your home. It's you're going to a place and taking the test with a training coordinator. No different than when somebody came in and put a written test in front of you.
Right. Will there be an additional fee for this, or will it be kind of put into the course?
No, it's built into the course. You know, the training coordinators. There is in the document that went out the other day, though. If there is so let's say that the agreement is that I don't know, Kentwood High School says you can use a computer lab, but every time you use it, they have to call in a janitor for the day or whatever, and it's $300. You can use your 17.5 to finance that.
Okay.
But it comes out of your county allotment.
All right.
So What we're finding with a lot of folks is they're getting in agreements with the high schools and stuff, and there are no. Ideally, is try to find a place where you can do it for nothing.
Okay, and there will be computer testing, be 100% on board for fiscal year 19.
It'll be here's one of the things that we're running into. There are places in the state where they're even at school levels are having problems with internet, just where we're at. It's possible that there are some places. And you know, the other thing is, like I said, if we get there that day and the internet doesn't work and the school can't open it up or whatever, we're still going to have the paper-based tests. But
Okay.
our goal is eventually, yes, it's the quickest, best way. And that, you know, we also envision there'll be days that, you know, hey, I got to take this test for Fire Officer 2, and they're doing it at Kentwood High School this Saturday, and I'm going to go in the afternoon. I sign up for one of the 20 slots, and you could be taking a Fire Officer 2 test. I could be taking an Instructor 1 test. Somebody else could be taking a Firefighter 2 retest. So eventually we'll get to the point when there's a test being given and our training coordinators there. Don't be surprised to do the Firefighter 1 and 2 tests in the morning, and in the afternoon, once the computers open up, we could have other tests going on at the same time.
Okay, perfect. Someone asked a question. You alluded to the reading levels of the texts earlier. Is there a place where they can get those verified? Because they've heard differently and they wanted to know.
I've talked with both publishers at FDIC this year, and I was told 7th grade.
Okay. And is there a place where they could get that? Like,
I don't know. They can reach out to the publisher. But
okay.
I asked that question. I had kind of heard kind of there again, it's kind of back to the rumor mill in the fire department.
Right.
I was told that one publisher was at a college level. And I asked them, the publisher, I said, how is it that you're at a college level and the other people are at? And the person from that publisher laughed at me. And I said, what's so funny? And they said, first off, I used to work for the other publisher in the same job that I'm doing for this publisher. And I can tell you that both of these books are at the same reading level.
One just has more pictures.
Yeah.
All right. So that's good. I think that's. If all the students have a laptop, can they do the test? I think it has to be a testing facility, right?
No,
yeah.
Nobody can. It's not bringing your own device.
Right.
Okay. Because we have to have the ability. Same thing too is, you know, when you get into this computer-based testing, you can't have a cell phone in the testing center. You can't have a smartwatch. You can't have an iPad. You can't have any electronic devices that may allow you to access the answers. And ultimately, it's a testing site, and we set forth the rules in the testing site.
Is it going to be like EMS testing, and if the test taker is getting more wrong than right,
no,
it will be booted?
No.
You have to take the entire test. Okay.
You're taking the whole test. Yep.
Okay.
We looked into, just to let everybody know, this computer-based testing platform that we have. It was part of a grant, and we did some smoke enhancements. It was a FEMA grant. It was $500,000. We could buy into the platforms that a lot of people are talking about for about $500,000. However, the fee to use it was anywhere from $4 to $7 per user per year. We estimate that we have in our smoke system about 30,000 people. If we bought 30,000 licenses at $7 a piece, do the math, that's 200 some thousand a year, right? So one of the things that we were looking at is that there's no way sustainable moving forward that we could get into one of these platforms. And if you want proof of that, when you sign up to take an online college class, what's the fee you pay? It's called the technology fee, right? Well, what's the technology fee funding? The online learning platform. So, you know, we don't have a mechanism to turn around to a fire department and say, hey, it's this much money per year for your members that are on your roster. So we had to stay within the budget that we had. And we are required to do a test in every county every year.
Cool.
Okay.
Yep.
Qualifications. One of the things that's in Public Act 291, it talks about a list. It has a whole, you know, I hit on it, Fire Officer 1, 2, 3, 4. It lists all the way through instructor, talks about chief officers. It talks about public safety directors, fire inspectors, hazmat responders. There's a whole shopping list. It will be the job of the Bureau of Fire Services to come up with the qualifications. There again, under the guidance of the Michigan Firefighter Training Council, with the majority approving what we bring forth. And we are working on those with the idea that by October 1st of next year, FY20 will be rolling this all out. So, got a poll question, Sean.
All right. Thank you very much. I was answering a question.
So what if the location of a class session changes from the submitted course schedule? Who do you need to notify? So we're gonna take the academy from Delhi Township and we're gonna go over to Delta Township tonight because, I don't know, we want to use some training prop they have. But we didn't show that on our schedule when we turned it in. Who do we need to contact?
And while they're answering, somebody just had the question of, is there a possibility that the state can verify those reading levels because they believe it's a liability?
Okay, yeah.
All right, we're about 65%. A couple more of you click in. We'll get, once this thing hits 70, I'll close it out. All right. And we're going to share the results. So it looks like we got 21% say you must contact the CTC, the County Training Coordinator, and 65% say you must contact the Regional Coordinator.
All right, the correct answer is the region coordinator. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea to reach out to your course manager, but our region coordinator needs to know, because as I'm looking through, I might say, hey, on my way home tonight, I'm going to stop in Greenville or Stanton to go by the, the Montcalm County Fire Academy. And if it says they're at the community college, that's where I'm going. And I don't want to find out that I drove past the fire station 20 miles ago where they actually were at, okay? So that's what we're looking for, to have that consistency. Hey, I got a question going back to the liability thing on the reading level. I would ask this at the end. I'm going to give you my phone number, and I would ask that person to reach out to me because I would like to talk to you more about the where you think the liability is. So
okay, I'll pass that on. And then someone, this question gets asked a lot too, but what happens to your current certifications? They put credentials. As stuff changes, do you test out of those, or do you retake the test?
No. So what we're going to do, we think, like I said, we're still building it, right? I mean, that's part of staff's job. It talks about in Public Act that the fire marshal and the extension, the Bureau of Fire Services, will put together that, the processes with the majority of the council. And everything that everybody has, if you're already a company officer 1 and 2, you will be till you're done being a firefighter. If you want to go through the new processes, it will require passing the exam. And that's one of the things as we move forward. So and also the NFPA is very clear on, in order to be a fire officer 2, we're going to be away from the word company officer 1 and 2. That'll be going away. I think that's an old actually carryover from the when we were back doing the Maryland program actually. But it's going to be fire officer 1. You have to get past the test first, then you take 2, then you take 3, then you take 4. It used to be, if you think about it, under the old way, we have people that, literally had met the requirements, turned in the certificates, and they, are getting to these different levels. There will be no prereq classes. So you'll take the fire officer 1 class and you'll have an exam. You'll take the fire officer 2 class, you'll have an exam. The prereq classes that are currently here now, the incident safety officer, the ed math, the STITCO, PITCO, MITCO, strategy and tactics, all those classes, because they're approved by council, will still be available, but they will not be tied into anything with being a fire officer. Public Act 291 is very clear that we cannot exceed the minimum requirements of NFPA for 1021. And those requirements do not talk about having any prereq classes. It says take the class and pass the test. So that's where we'll be moving to.
Was the September 27th memo, was that sent out to everyone or just the CTCs?
That memo was sent out to the CTCs. I'm going to write a note. I will make sure that gets posted on Gov Delivery.
Okay, there you go. So I got someone with a hand up too, so I'm going to go to Matt here. Matthew.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Hey, Kev, when does the prereqs, when are they no longer required? when did that take effect, or when does it take
Well,
effect?
they're required right now if you want to get in under the old system. Okay. When we get to FY 2020, okay, so October 1st of 19, we'll be switched over to the new certifications exams for the classifications, and then the prereqs won't be there. So I'm glad you're bringing that up. Right now, if you want to get your company officer 1 and 2 and you want to finish it up, those prereqs are still there. And if everything that's in effect right now, certifications, it'll be this whole year. So this is the year to finish stuff up. If you're 1 class short in your fire officer 3, this is the time to finish it up if you want to make sure that you get it done before we go to the new system.
Okay, but is it required right now?
Yes, it is required.
All right, thanks, good.
If you want to be a company officer 1 and 2, you have to have the prereqs.
Okay, thanks.
Good.
You
All
bet.
right. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, I got a poll question up here, Sean.
Okay, I can't see your screen right now. I'm still on the last poll. Yep.
All
For
right.
some reason, it keeps every time we do a poll, it keeps going back to it's just showing that again. What's your poll question? And I'll pull it up from over here.
So you've seen it now. It says the
Yep.
instructor is required
Yep.
to sign in a class sign-in sheet.
Yep.
Remember, a lot of people say, well, that's a roster. In the smoke system, when you go to course roster, the form says class sign-in sheet. I'm trying to use verbiage that's on the printed sheet. You would think that it'd be real easy to go into smoke and change a lot of these things. I'm not saying that we won't change it eventually, but I'm going with what's on there right now. Okay, so that's what it says on the top of the form. Even though when you click in smoke, it says to go to the roster. That's not what the sheet says. I didn't build the system, so we got to kind of live with what we got.
Well, these are coming in here. I had something that comes up a lot at training council and at curriculum. So is company officer 1 and 2 the equivalency of fire officer 1 and 2? The verbiage question.
Currently, that was the system. We are the authority having jurisdiction. The Bureau of Fire Services is, and when council put that together, that was what was the equivalency to fire officer 1 and 2. They called it company officer 1 and 2. And then there's fire officer 3. That's the only 2 options right now, right?
Right.
So there again, the authority having jurisdiction. NFPA is very clear that the authority having jurisdiction can set forth the requirements. The current requirements in place right now haven't changed, but I'm also sharing this is the last year that those requirements will be in place.
And to build upon that, going with NFPA 1041, is instructor 1 going to be part of the new fire officer 1?
It's not part of the fire officer 1. If you read NFPA 1021, it says in order to be a fire officer 1 per 1021, you have to be an instructor 1 per 1041.
Okay.
Says it right in 1021. To be a fire officer 1, you must be an instructor 1.
So is the state of Michigan is going to go with that then?
Yeah, well, we have to because in Public Act 291, it says that we have to follow the NFPA standards.
Gotcha.
And that we have to meet the minimum. The minimum is to be a fire officer 1 is you have to be an instructor 1.
And then, Bill, I know a bunch of questions are coming in on this, so I'm reading these.
Yeah.
So I know another point that's going to come up here is, well, what if I'm already a fire instructor 1? I don't have my. I'm sorry. What if I'm already a fire officer 1? I don't have my instructor 1. Under the
right now, you probably have company officer 1 and 2, or you have the old. I'm talking about going back to the 90s. The old fire officer 1, 2, or 3. That stuff's still in full effect. You still are. That piece of paper is going to be worth everything it is still today in the future. Under the new system, as people move into the system, those are the requirements that are there.
Okay. And then is it possible to have 2 firefighter 1, 2 exams due to our class? Oh, this is a way long question. I might have to get to that one later. Is pro board acceptable for fire officer 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Yes, and that will come down to, we're also building out the reciprocity process.
Okay.
So if you have the pro board exam meets the NFPA standards. So it will be when we get to that part, and that won't be until we fully implement the rules. So please don't start sending that stuff to TJ and Dan. Okay, I want to be very upfront with that. The only thing that we're doing automatically, and when I say automatically, there's a form that has to be filled out, is for reciprocity for firefighters, because we think it's important that people have folks to respond in their communities. So if somebody moves here from North Carolina, they give us a certificate. It's from North Carolina. It says fire officer 1 and 2, or excuse me, firefighter 1 and 2. We will give them reciprocity. Now, one thing that changed in Public Act 291, they also have to attest that they're in good standing in their state, and they also can't have been convicted of a felony. So moving forward, anybody who's coming to the state for reciprocity is when they send in their certificate, we're going to require them to have something. So let's say this person comes from South Carolina. Hey, yes, Kevin Selmeyer is in good standing in South Carolina. And then I'm also going to attest that I don't have a felony conviction. It speaks to it in Public Act 291. If you falsify those and we find out, that we can take that certification away from you. Okay. So everybody thinks that, hey, I'm just going to send in my piece of paper and I'm going to get what I want. No, you're going to send in your piece of paper. And here's the other thing. You're going to have a document from the agency that you're coming from stating that yours meets NFPA standards for whichever standard you're going for. So it's not just, hey, you turn in a certificate and we just give it to you. There's some things that you're going to have to do that are going to be part of the process in order for reciprocity to be granted.
Cool. It looks like everybody got the class sign-in sheet.
Sweet.
Yep.
Okay, I'm moving on. I guess I'm wondering whether I have the right screen. So I'm gonna hit that, and then I'm gonna hit here. Maybe I'm moving on.
We're still on the year survey.
Yeah, I know. This thing is like, there we go.
Again, just to get back, this comes up a lot. The current certifications will carry over and be grandfathered.
Yes.
Because again,
anything that you have, and there's many of us that are on this call tonight. Hey, folks, you earned everything you have. In no way, shape, or form is the council trying to take anything away from you. What we are looking at as we move forward, and could somebody say, hey, I did all my stuff back in the 90s and I want to do it again? If you want to do it again, then go take the class and take the exam. So we'll work through that process. There again, like I said, council will keep us on track. I have to have a majority of approval of council in order to implement these policies, but it's definitely something that we're working on. Okay. How many consecutive months of MFERS fire reports does each department have to have in order to receive fireworks safety fees in FY20?
Everyone's clicking in.
You see that, Sean?
I see my poll. I don't see yours right now. I'm gonna close the poll here. Get 80% of the people in.
Yeah.
And it looks like 96% said 12 months.
Okay. Well, I hope that it gets to 100% by next October, because it is 12 months. And, this is also the thing, this would be a good point to go back. Remember, that was from July, and it ends in, it started October 1st, or excuse me, August 1st of 2018 through July 31st of 19, because we have to have time to implement it when we get to going into the fiscal year, if whether people are entitled to the money or not. Okay.
Got it. Looks good.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on your last question on your PowerPoint.
So am I.
It's that state computer you're using, probably.
I know that. Might be. Well, we're stuck.
Okay.
So the other part that I want to talk about, I talked about qualifications, right? Or I should say, we talked about online testing. We talked about qualifications, right, that come down to for each one of the jobs, if you want to say. And then we were going to talk, the next slide I had was to talk about certifications. When we look at certifications, we want to make sure that, there's going to be a test involved moving forward, right? We know that. And I'm going to pop out. I don't think anybody's seeing my screen right now.
You want me to pop mine on?
Yeah, well, hang on. I'm going to hit something here. There, now everybody should be seeing it. So when we come down through, the next thing that we were talking about was certifications. So there'll be exams. We hit on that, and they'll be done with a written test. And then the last one that I have is continuing education. So by the time we get to FY20, we start looking at next October 1st of 19, we will have continuing education in place. We've had a lot of meetings. I've solicited a lot of groups. I've had it at town hall meetings. There again, council is going to have to actually approve what the number is. I think it's safe to say this, though, that the number is probably somewhere between 12 and 20 credits a year. The overwhelming thing that I'm hearing across the state is that they want it over a 3-year cycle. So let's just say, for the sake of discussion, it was 12. It also then would be 12 credits for firefighter per year. So at the end of 3 years, you'd have to have 36 credits. Do I get really hung up? That's people said of, hey, I only did 10 in the first year, but I did 14 in the next year. And but there again, it's algebra. X equals at the end of 3 years, you have to have the 36 credits. Or maybe it's 20 and you got to have 60. I think we still have to work that out. I also think that we have to be reasonable, and this is what I'm hearing from a lot of folks, and what our staff will work towards as we put together the processes that there again will have to be approved by council. And that is that, you know, if somebody's a instructor, they're a firefighter, they're a inspector, they're a fire investigator, you know, you got all this whole gamut, that if each one was 20, to have somebody say we have to have 80 hours, I don't know at the end of the year anybody's got that much time, right? So somehow we'll have to have kind of a hybrid where there's a crossover where we say, yeah, those credits count for instructor, but they also count for fire officer, but they also count for firefighter. What this is going to require, though, and this is probably the one that I'm hearing the most about, is it is going to require chiefs to do continuing education. So, you know, I hear this a lot of times, you know, well, the fire chief doesn't come to our training, or the fire chief doesn't go to training. I can share this, it is coming, that it is very clearly spelled out in there, and to be a fire chief in the state of Michigan, you're going to meet the continuing ed requirements. What might that look like? It might be, hey, you go to the summer conference, and you can get the credits you need for the year. You know, one of the positives that we have to look at when we look at continuing ed, why are the EMS instructor conferences always full? Why are the fire inspector conferences full? 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago in East Lansing, the Fire Inspector Society had 375 people. They turned people away from that conference. Why? Because of continuing ed. I think this is a great opportunity for fire service organizations across Michigan to put on training events and to host them, with the idea of helping people meet their continuing education needs. So it's kind of in a nutshell. Have we 100% hit the number? No. But I will say this, as I out and about in the state, I was at an MTA event a couple of weeks ago, the Michigan Township Association in Frankenmuth. You know, for a fire department that meets twice a month, that's 24 times a year, and they do an hour of training each time, they're going to have plenty of training. They're going to have 24 hours of training. For the fire department that meets maybe once a month, and they if the requirement was set higher than 12, then yeah, they're going to have to up the ante a little bit for training. But one of the things that I've heard from all the organizations is that the belief is that we've got to keep up to speed on our skills, and that's really what continuing education is about.
Is there a potential to do online CE credits, kind of like there is for EMS?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you an example of that, and I brought that up to the MTA. The National Fallen Firefighter Foundation, the Fire Hero Learning Network, I think they're up to 12 classes on there, all about an hour long. And not only do you take them and you get a certificate, but it actually has a transcript that you could turn in at the end of the year and say, I did these classes. And they're free. They've been paid for by FEMA grants and AFG grants. So, I mean, it's going to be credits. It's not going to be, and that stuff is all geared around leadership and firefighting and safety and the 16 initiatives and mental wellness and a whole host of things. So there's going to be the opportunity to, it's not all going to be hands-on credits. And look at EMS, they're moving away from hands-on credits, right? So, I mean, that's a whole nother story.
They asked about like center learn or other alternatives like that.
Sure, why
Okay.
not? You know, at the end of the day, think about it. Those things are more structured than a lot of trainings that are held at fire stations. You know, engine so-and-so catches an alarm and they're gone for half the class. And yet you and I both know at the end of the day, the roster gets signed, right? So, because it was signed, passed around when the class started. You know, all of those classes that are online and stuff, those classes actually have a test at the end, right? So
Right.
otherwise you don't get the certificate. So I'm just saying that, you know, I don't want to get nitpicky on training. I really don't. We start
Tim,
looking at, you know.
right. Tim Seal wants some CEs for tonight. That's what I laughed at.
Well, once we get the system put in place,
Right.
yeah. No, I agree. I think really we should start looking at it. There should be, right?
Yep.
That, you know, if you participate in webinars and different things like that, absolutely. I mean, this is the technology is allowing us to, you know, and here's the thing, what tonight I'm looking at 87, 88 people were on here. The reality is this is going to get viewed hundreds of times because the union's going to go out there and they're going to post it. It's going to be out on YouTube, right?
Yep.
So that's the whole idea of doing this, is to get the information out far and wide as much as we can.
And you guys will have that link too to put on the. People have asked about that for you to put
Yes.
on your site, and people can get to that. What about one last question before we move on out of this is what about like specific sites like a fire rescue or something like that? There's like some kind of educational piece on there where it's not like tracked like it would be in a formal setting.
Well, I think there has to be a way to track it. So for the ones that are already doing the tracking where you can get a transcript at the end, I don't know, we're gonna have to look at some of that stuff, but you know, here's the other thing. If we're all honest, if you remember back in 2005, 2006, when all the NIM stuff was going in, there were people that flat out put the thing on the computer, went for a walk, came back, played the next module, came back, and at the end took the test, right? Where even they've refined their stuff to now, you know, there's questions throughout, the thing stops, you have to answer the question, and then there's actually, you know, tests to get out of the modules. Online learning has come a long way. I don't care if you're a soccer coach or a football coach or you're an EMT. The checks and balances are there now, and then we'll have to work out. You know, here's the other thing. The continuing ed stuff isn't going to be anything that you all send into the state. We're not going to be tracking it. What it's going to be, it's going to be tracked at the local level, and I can assure you who is going to be the compliance side of continuing ed. It's going to be my OSHA. So one of the things is going to be is when they come to visit your station and they say, hey, we want to look at your training records and we want to look at whether the continuing ed requirements were met. Those are going to be ways that they're going to measure this. There's no way that we have the capacity with the number of firefighters where, you know, are turning in every year their license expires and those type of things. So
right.
it's going to be the burden is going to be on the departments to track the training. And then sure, could we get to the point where council directs the fire marshal to go around to certain departments and audit? Sure, we could get to that. But you know, that's going to require staffing to get a lot of that stuff done.
Right. So in case you didn't notice, I took over your screen, so I'm
yeah, I see that.
That way it's up. And then
yep. And if you want to go to the next slide,
okay,
that we're home.
And then what one last question, a big one, and I was just going to answer it myself, but I think I know what the answer is, but I'd rather let you say it to everybody. Will there be a specific CE minimum requirement, for example, 2 credits for ventilation, etc.?
I don't know, and the reason I say that is that you know, when you look at EMS and you say ventilation or you say ladders or you say SCBA, I think that's something we have to work through. If council decided that it would be divided out that way, there again, the Bureau of Fire Service and the fire marshal builds the system, and it's with the majority of council. So if in the work sessions they came back and said, hey, we want to do that to maybe the extent that we're talking about in that question, then they would direct us to do that. But you know, one of the things is that you know, that we're gonna have to work towards that.
Okay. There's a ton of questions on here still, people.
All right.
Even
So
stuff.
we're to question time, and hey, my cell phone number is up there, and reach out, text me, and my email is there, and don't be surprised if you send me an email that I don't call you back, because sometimes as I'm rolling down the road, it's easier rather than typing a response at some point to answer those questions. I do want to give this disclaimer though. This came up and council kind of asked me to talk about this a little bit. When you send an email to the whole council, if we start answering those emails, some could argue that we have a quorum. At least that's what the council feels like. So you sending an email and you send it to all 9 of us on the council and say, I want to know what your opinion is on continuing ed, is don't be surprised that it shows up on the agenda for the next meeting. Because one of the things that we don't want to do is we don't want a bunch of emails going back and forth to be considered a quorum. And we don't want, that's the feeling of council, is we don't want to be looked at as we're conducting business outside of the meeting. So if you as a member or a firefighter out there, or as a course manager, or as a chief officer, want to send an email to anybody on council, you can do that. And we're not saying you can't. But when you send a group email and you're asking for us all, hey, what's your opinion on whether or not this a hazmat class should be within 45 days of, it's going to make it on the, we're going to, don't be surprised we put it on the agenda to talk about at a meeting, because that's the time and the place if you want the whole group to talk about something. It's not sending emails back and forth in between meetings trying to get the council to give an answer to a question and get the whole feedback of the council. So I hope that's clear, but that is something that we talked about is at a work session recently, is about the fact that if we're all weighing in, there's definitely, it could be construed as a meeting. Okay.
Perfect. We got a bunch of these things. I'm trying to answer some of them as I can. But is there a committee already established to determine the requirements? I know. Well, the rules. The council's looking at the rules.
Yep.
And that's kind of where they're determining what.
Yep. So in Public Act 291, it says the fire marshal will set forth the processes, policy, procedures, and everything. And then there again, I know it keeps coming back with the majority of council. So it's our job to come up with, so give an example, it might be Dan, TJ, and I and staff, we come up with the qualifications for, I'll say, fire officer 1. And then we go to the council and they say, no, that isn't what we want, or that isn't the intent, or hey, you're overstepping your bounds there. That's more than what's required in the NFPA standard. That's the checks and balances to help us get this right, so that when we go forth with the whole rule set, then, there again, it says with the majority of council. So that's kind of how we're working through we'll work through the rule process, but it's not a committee as a whole. If you want to come to the meetings when the work sessions are there, that if you want to say the Bureau brings forth stuff and you want to have input, there's a place to do that. And there also is, if you want to be in the know, participate in the council meetings. And the next council meeting is in Traverse City on October, make sure I get the right date here. The next council meeting is on October 26th in Traverse City during the instructor conference at 1 p.m.
Awesome. Okay. Someone asked about minimum training standards by position.
Yep.
And that's all kind of the same conversation. So that's all kind of being looked at.
As in,
I'm not sure if they're talking about like a fire inspector versus a Fire chief versus
Well,
firefighter.
the fire inspector actually is already built, so that's built around
That's bad,
60
yeah.
credits over 3 years,
That might
right?
be a bad example.
And you got to pass, yeah, you got to pass the NFPA exam. So I don't see us messing with that a whole lot because we've already got the, if you want to say the policies, procedures. Could we tweak that some? Sure. But what you see with the fire inspector might actually be more in line with what you're going to see for the other positions. And if you remember, for fire inspector, they don't break it down by individual credits. I mean, they award credits, but they don't tell you, hey, you have to have 3 code credits and 3 public assembly credits and 3 school credits. See where I'm going with that?
Yep.
So they go with, you have to have credits, and you normally get those by attending workshops or conferences, no different than if you attended the Michigan Professional Firefighters Safety Conference. So.
Okay. When will a decision be made on which publisher will be the state using for continue to use, or will they continue to use both publishers for firefighter 1 and 2?
Well, for FY19, and that went out in the memo that went out on the 27th, which I'll get posted to Gov Delivery. It says that it's Jones and Bartlett 3 and IFSTA 6. We'll work closer when we get to the new publishers are getting ready to roll out. I shouldn't say the current publishers, the 2 are getting ready to roll out their new textbook. I'll give this analogy, and somebody asked me this recently, and I'll use the Bureau of Fire Services. I have employees here on Friday that wear maize and blue sweatshirts, and I have employees here that wear green and white. If I was to make if I was to come down and say everybody has to wear green and white on Friday, I would probably have some folks that wouldn't be too happy with me that like maize and blue, and conversely going the other way. I think both publishers do a really good job of the information. I also think that we have the capacity with our staff and also with the curriculum committee validating it. You know, I'm going to acknowledge that when I got here, the testing was pretty screwed up and there were some mistakes, and we talked about that. And I went around the state and openly talked about that. For the last year, we've been dialed in on our testing. I'll also share this, that once we had the curriculum committee going over the test that we are actually putting out there to the public right now, 86% of the people who took the firefighter 1 and 2 test that attended an academy last year across the state passed. That's a pretty high pass rate. And I'll also share something that I've noticed, and it probably doesn't have anything to do with curriculum, but when you start sharing with people that you're going to make sure that they're teaching the whole book and that they're teaching the required number of hours, that pass-fail rate went up pretty good. So we're going to stay focused on that. I wouldn't get too hung up on a publisher. I think that you know, those are one of the things that we look forward. I get it, but I can tell you this right now: if we picked one publisher, half of you wouldn't be happy. And I think we could even do a poll right now of that'd be an interesting poll, Sean, of which one that they think we should use. I'd be interested to see what the numbers are. But I guarantee it won't be 100% for one of the publishers. Can you do that?
I'm looking at. I'm trying right now.
It basically would be either IFSTA or J and B. I think that would be your 2 options, and let people vote. But it isn't going to be 100%. I guarantee you that. And so when you tell one group or another that yours is going away, I don't think that's healthy for the fire service. That's my opinion, though. Is it coming up?
I'm trying. Let's see.
Sorry to spring this on you. That was a good question.
No, let's see if we can find it. There you go, guys. Just like that. Which publisher do you want? J&B or IFSTA?
72 of you are still here, so.
Yep. You can change the face of training in the state.
You can abstain, but your vote won't get right.
We're at 67%. So a couple more of you want to weigh in. We'll get to over 70%, and it's neck and neck, folks. Cast your vote.
You bet it is. It's like
All
the
right.
roulette wheels rolling around and whether it's going to be on a red number or a black number, right? I mean,
Right. Okay, we're at 76%. Looks like that's kind of where we're at. So we're going to close that
okay.
poll and share the results.
Yeah, there you go. Right there. So if I picked one of them today, if I picked the J and B one, then 57% of you on this call right now wouldn't be happy. So, you know, that's one of those things that, like I said, it goes back to whether you root for green or white or maize and blue. And I had somebody else tell me why I root for Central or Western. I mean, those are even a few outliers. I've also had people ask me, what about some of the other publishers that are out there? So definitely not going to be decided tonight.
So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we've got like way too many questions to get through. So
Okay.
sorry, people. I know you've been waiting. So I'm just gonna get a couple of them that people had. One was, when do you see the additional 300,000 being allocated?
So what happens now that it's October 1st, I am going to meet tomorrow with my financial person. It has to go into what they call a supplemental budget. They actually lump a bunch of these things together and then they get moved through. The process will take a while. So to sit here and say that it'll be in a week, it definitely won't. To say that it might take a couple of months, it could. But the way that it works, it has to go before the legislators, and they actually have to adopt this supplemental budget. So there's times when they tweak things within the budget, and this too will be added in there. And some could say, hey, well, I thought the council said 2.3. The budget was actually set. Actually, we'll do the budget in November for FY20. So, that's one of the things is that you try to forecast what you think it's going to be. I think it's great that they allowed us to raise it by 300,000, but it now requires a supplement. So, the question moving forward was, well, what happens if next year, what would I look for? Well, if we got 2.3 right now, I would look to try to do that in 2020, or maybe even try to increase it some. But that's based on the amount of money that's coming in from fireworks sales too.
All right, sorry.
What else you got?
Back here? We just got a couple. The other one, they wanted to know if the CTC should be sending the 1099s out.
I don't know that it's the CTC. It's more of whoever's doing the fiduciary.
Okay.
So, I'll talk about this. Before I became the fire marshal, I was running my own training business, and I had classes where there were people that taught for me. Anytime they made over $600, I gave them a 1099 so they could claim it on their taxes, and also I could write it off. Okay, that I didn't take in all that money, I actually dispersed that money out. The state is really no different. The state is putting out $2 million last year, and they're saying, hey, we gave $2 million to the counties. If you give it out in more than $600, you're supposed to do a 1099. So, talk to your tax folks, or talk to your treasurer and some of your folks in your townships. So,
one person had a question about the curriculum. What about vehicle extrication? Do we have an approved curriculum coming?
We don't have. We're still with the curriculum that we currently have. Those are some things that I'm sure that as we look at fixing all of this stuff, so to speak, but that is something that has not been you want to say decided.
Okay. And then as far as the CEs, are you looking for content or contact? Contact hours or content hours?
I don't know, Sean. I left the house at 5:30 this morning, and it's 10 after 9, and I got an hour and a half to drive home. So,
yep.
To potato. I don't know if that's the right answer, but
we'll get through it in this process.
Yeah, that's stuff that we'll definitely vet out, and that's stuff that I would encourage. If you have an opinion one way or another, just realize though that it does talk about in our rules currently that 50 minutes is considered an hour.
Okay. And one last question, because we're gonna let you go so you can get home. Which department of the state would regulate the CE requirements similar? And I think it'll be the same answer probably, but like Laura does with EMS.
Yeah, well, Laura doesn't do it. You talk DHS does.
DHS, yep. I'm sorry they put Laura on here. I was just reading.
So, that's a little bit different. You send in your $25 or whatever to renew, right? And you have to have credits within certain areas. Nowhere in Public Act 291 does it talk about, relicensing and different things like that. As I shared, it ultimately comes down to being able to produce training records. If the council directed me to go out and audit a certain amount of departments, then we'd have to look at that. I can tell you an area though that most likely would be looking at your stuff if they came and paid you a visit, and that would be MIOSHA. Do you have your policies, procedures in place, and are you meeting the continued ed requirements of Public Act 291? They have, that's the type of stuff that they do, right? I will say this, and I've gotten to be pretty good friends with Bart Pickelman, the head of MIOSHA, is his first intent is always to educate. And they will come in, they will talk to you, but at the end of the day, if they find something that's deficient, they're going to give you time to fix it. Or if they look at it and say, you knew about this and you didn't follow through on it, it ultimately comes down to worker safety, and then that would be an issue that they would take up at that time. I mean, really, continuing ed is about firefighter safety.
Right.
And making sure that you've got the skills. And remember, in MIOSHA Part 74, it says all members must be trained for commensurate with the duties they are expected to perform. That's already in there, if you really want to look at it. Training is a requirement.
For sure, and it needs to be. Thanks everybody for participating tonight, and thank you, Fire Marshal Selmeyer, for putting this on. I got a lot of nice comments back that everybody's very happy we're doing these. Like
Thanks,
I said
Sean.
earlier, yep, there is a survey at the end. If you can please answer that survey and kind of let us know what you're thinking. And anything else, Fire Marshal Selmeyer?
No, I think this is a great medium to talk back and forth with people. I look forward to doing more. I got to give a big shout out to Michigan Professional Firefighters Union. I mean, it's their account that we're using to run these classes. And Sean, you've been great for taking time out of your night to facilitate this, and I appreciate it. And we'll look to do more of this type of stuff. And be safe out there. And hope to see a bunch of you at the instructor conference or any of the other conferences as we move around the state, and look for some town hall meetings that will happen in the near future too.
Terrific. Great. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night. And we'll talk to y'all soon.
And you're recording it, and it'll be posted later, I'm sure sometime tomorrow or the next day, right?
Yep, we are. I'm stopping the recording right now. It's all set.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.